The Shadow Fury or the Giant Sword. To be honest, guys, these are both epic choices of swords in Hypixel Skyblock. The Giant Sword and the Shadow Fury are both really big competitors, and people have recently been asking which is better. Cause to be honest, no one. It's really your choice. If it comes to the end, it's really your choice in which sword you want to buy. But today I'm gonna be showing you evidence of which sword is better and which sword you should probably buy more. Let's get right into the video. Okay guys, as we can see here, this is Withered Shadow Fury, and this is actually almost as maxed out as my Giant Sword, so I wanted to make it a fair look at. This is the highest price on the auction house, but I wanted it to be like a fair battle, so I showed you my Giant Sword and this Shadow Fury. So first of all, the pros for the Shadow Fury is that, well, basically it has more strength than the Giant Sword does. So, as you guys can see here, my Giant Sword gives me 235 strength. And this also has Withered on it, by the way. And the gemstones. And then here, it gives you, we have basically the same sword. And so this one gives you 411. And that's actually pretty good. And then the crit damage, 136%. This gives you 70%. So that is obviously much better. That's 2 pros already. More strength and more crit damage. And then defense and speed. Defense and speed. Do I see any defense or speed here? No, I don't. Because this has other 2. That's another 2 pros. So 4 pros already. This is really good. And the enchants don't really matter because we have like basically the same enchants. But the damage, that's a con. The damage, it's not the same. As you guys can see, Giant Sword has much more damage than the Shadow Fury. It gives me 580. This one gives me 300. Almost 300 and literally almost maybe, we could say maybe 370. This gives me 580. So the Giant Sword is almost giving me 200 base damage more, which is much better. And so basically that is a huge downside to the Shadow Fury though. But, and also this has the upgrade of the Shadow Fury. This is not like the regular Shadow Fury. But we're showing maxed out, so might as well do this. Now let's talk about another thing. The Shadow Fury, another pro for the Shadow Fury is that it's better for clearing dungeons. If you do dungeons and you have a Shadow Fury, it's much more easier to do dungeons than with a Giant Sword. Because with a Giant Sword, the clearing the boss or the room is much more harder than clearing with a Shadow Fury. Shadow Fury, as you guys saw, gives you defense and speed. So speed as in you can move faster and hit faster. And who knows, you could maybe get like a crochet tiger plushie on your pet or something to make your Shadow Fury hit faster. But Giant Sword is more of an outside of dungeon sword. Like you guys have seen Ghost Grinding, they use Giant Sword. And then also they use Giant Swords for Void Gloom sometimes. Tier 2s, you can use a Giant Sword for that. And they use it for like much other stuff. You can use it for Wolf Slayer. Pretty much anything outside of dungeons this thing works for. But basically when it's in dungeons, it's not the best sword. I'm not gonna lie. But the Shadow Fury is also bad outside of dungeons, but cracked inside of dungeons. That's all I wanted to say. Let's get back into the video. Okay guys, we just finished Shadow Fury, and you guys saw pros. We have 4 pros of the Shadow Fury. Actually, basically 5. Strength has more than the Giant Sword. Crit damage has more than the Giant Sword. Defense and speed. Giant Sword does not give you that at all. And on top of that, you guys, it is easier for clearing dungeons. Sorry, I had a voice crack there. Now let's move on to the other sword, the Giant Sword. Okay guys, as you guys can see right here, I have the Giant Sword, and I opened the Shadow Fury so we can compare easier like this. So basically, the Giant Sword, first of all, base damage, amazing. Base damage is much more better than the Shadow Fury's damage here. That's the first thing. And the next thing is that basically we have the same thing, except this one costs mana. The Giant Slam, I think they added that, by the way. The Giant Slam costs mana now. I think it used to not cost mana, but they added a mana cost to it and cooldown of 30 seconds. Here, it's a cooldown of 15 seconds and no mana cost. That's another pro for the Shadow Fury, by the way. But now we're going to talk about pros for the Giant Sword. So basically, first of all, the Giant Sword's ability, I think that, in my opinion, the Giant Sword's ability is much more useful than the Shadow Fury's ability, because basically, nearby enemies could mean 50 to like 20 enemies. 20 to 50 enemies. Like, it could be so many enemies, you guys. Like, as much as you want. You can cluster a huge zombie raid and just yeet your giant sword, right click on it, and there's a huge sword that comes into the ground. And basically, that's the good thing about the giant sword, is that the giant slam, that's a really good ability. And now the next thing we're going to be talking about is that the giant sword is actually good outside of dungeons. That's another pro. So it has base damage, abilities better, and it's good outside of dungeons. So that's 3 pros we have there. And another thing is that the giant sword in general just deals more damage because basically the giant sword is like really expensive. Like 4 times the cost of a Shadow Fury. Also, another thing, I was saying this before, is that the giant sword is actually better outside of dungeons than inside of dungeons. I was saying that right now. And so basically what's happening is that we have like around 5 cons. Actually, no, not 5. Not 5 cons, 5 pros. Not even 5 pros. We have the base damage, which is 1, and then we have the ability, which is 2, better outside of dungeons, which is 3, and I think that's it. And now basically the negatives, well, we can talk about that here. It's going to be a huge list. So basically, crit damage, less, that's a con. Strength, less, that's a con. Let's see. I guess the basic, I guess, it's bad inside of dungeons, that's a con. So we have like literally 4 cons right there, right? So, strength, crit damage. Oh yeah, sorry, 3 cons. I can't count, bro. 3 cons. We have 3 cons right there. Oh yeah, and it's also much more expensive, as I said before. It's much more expensive. So that's another 4 cons and 3 positives. That's not a really good percentage score. And the Shadow Fury is much more cheaper, so we can add another pro to that Shadow Fury. And yeah, basically that's a good thing. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we have finished the video. I have told you which one is better, and in the end it comes down to your choice. But I would recommend, if you are a poor player and you don't have that much money, buy a Shadow Fury. It is much more cheaper than a giant sword. But if you want to deal more damage, because a giant sword does deal more damage, but basically it's so expensive, and that's why people buy a Shadow Fury, and that's basically why there's this debate upon them, is because the Shadow Fury is so much more cheaper than the giant sword. But if you like that rich guy who has like 250 million coins just lying around, I don't know who would have that, but if you do, just buy the giant sword. I mean, the giant sword is just amazing sword. I bought it because I had enough money. I have a little bit of money in my purse right now. But yeah, I just bought the giant sword because it dealt much more damage, and I was that rich player who had enough money lying around like that. I uploaded a video previously about how I spent 200 hours trying to get this thing. Finally I bought it from the auction house, and it cost me 250 million coins. But in the end, it's your choice. If you're poor, buy the Shadow Fury. If you're rich, buy the giant sword. It's that simple. I'll catch you guys in the next video, and peace.